And it looks like we are live. I'll just double check my my Facebook page here just to make sure that I'm not wasting your time and that we are in fact going live. And we are.
Speaking never waste of time.
So that's good. We're underway. So welcome everybody. Today I've got a really special guest. And his name is Mark Inglis, and thank goodness it is, because we just had a chat beforehand, and for some reason I thought that I had been mispronouncing his name all this time, which would be highly embarrassing considering he's a speaker with essential talent. But he is indeed the great Mark Inglis. Thank you very much for joining us, sir.
Oh, lovely to be here, Sean. Well, can't be really many other places, can we, eh?
Now, everybody, just so you know, we are going to have a few issues as far as the picture goes today because Mark is in Hamner Springs and it's just, well, for whatever reason, we're not going to have perfect picture, but you are going to be able to hear him. If it goes a little bit cranky, it doesn't matter. The thing is, this is going to be a really, really inspiring chat and you're really going to get a lot out of it. So you might be at work sneaking on, you know, watching a little bit now. You can watch it later on once we're not live. It's going to be really good. So I'm just going to do a little intro, and I want to make sure I get this right because he has been busy. So Mark Joseph Inglis, ONZM, of course. He's a New Zealand mountaineer, researcher, winemaker, motivational speaker. He holds a degree in human biochemistry from Lincoln University. He's conducted research in leukemia. He's also an accomplished cyclist and as a double leg amputee, won a silver medal in the 1K time trial event at the 2000 Summer Paralympics in Sydney. And of course, he's the first double amputee to reach the summit of Mt Everest, the highest mountain in the world. I think as a motivational speaker, he's spoken to at least a couple of 100,000 people by now. I think he's written around about 5 books by memory. And here he is. He's our guest today. Welcome, sir.
Well, thank you. Yeah, and hello from Hamner Springs. It's a pretty special place to be locked down, and I can tell you, it's the I'd say it's the lockdown capital of New Zealand, and that you're not so locked down. You know, we're so lucky. We have a beautiful forest that we can wander out into, keeping our distancing, of course. But it is ultra local, and that's one of the great elements and one of the saviors, and it's one of the reasons why I live here, Sean. You know, I travel. Well, I used to say I travel a lot, but I'm not quite sure I can say that anymore. I used to travel a lot. About between a third and a half my time is away from home, and it's really important to have a home like a healing place like Hamner to come back to. You know, you drive over that bridge as you come into Hamner, and you just chill right out. You know, it's as a mountaineer, you're actually in the mountains. Yeah, it's pretty neat, really. Yeah, we're lucky. We're privileged.
You have packed, you know, just the introduction alone, people will, you know, you've packed so much into your life so far. Sorry?
Well, to be fair, you missed a few things here, mate. You missed a few.
What I've missed.
Come on. Yeah, so I'm the adventure ambassador for scouting. I've been that about almost 10 years now. Real privilege to help the scouting. What else? I've also got a doctorate from Lincoln College, although to be fair, they did give it to me. And so I'm a doctor of natural resources as well. I try not to use too many natural resources, but they gave me a doctorate in it anyway. I was one of the very first students really to go through the park ranger course way back in the mid 70s. So I had a really strong connection with Lincoln University, as they're known to now. But there's plenty of room yet. You know, it's I used to say I'm halfway, but I might not be halfway anymore. It might be a wee bit past halfway, but there's still plenty of scope to do plenty more things.
Hey, we're going to go back to 1982 very shortly, because there'll be some people in our audience that won't know what happened, and this is where the story gets interesting. But before we do you think you've packed an enormous amount into your life so far. Do you think what happened in 1982 with you losing your legs turned you into that person where you just went, you know what, I'm going to make the most of every single minute in my life? Or do you think, I think you were 23 at that time, something like that. Were you 23 years of age? See, research. So do you think that you were already that you were in that frame of mind that that's what you're going to do in your life anyway, that you were going to just pack a lot in?
Good question, and really hard to answer from the inside out. And so one of the best ways is because many people ask me that. I went around and I asked a whole bunch of my old mountaineering friends who are still my mountaineering friends and said, look, do you still see the same person that you saw before? And they go, yes, you're still Inglis, you're still a loose unit, It's,
Yeah.
The only difference is that I have an ability to express myself in different ways now, and I'm really lucky because I've lost a lot of friends in the mountains. It's a really dangerous sandpit to play in. I squeaked out of it in 1982 with my life, and for that I'll always be grateful.
Okay, so
it's that.
Let's start there. Let's start there, Mark, because I really want you to explain to people what happened on that mountain in 1982 and talk us through it, because as I said, there'll be people tuning in, there'll be the younger audience tuning in that may not know the story, and it's a fascinating one. Take us back to 1982. You're mountaineering on Mount Cook.
Yes, it was. I was a search and rescue mountaineer at the time. Had the boys' own job. Amazing, There are 8 of us as professional mountaineers at Mount Cook. On a training climb in November of 1982, Phil Dool and I did the East Ridge of Cook. And we did the East Ridge and we stuck our nose over the top and came to see that the weather report that promised us 24 hours actually only looked like about 12 hours. Big storm had just hit. And really the only place to find any shelter right up near the summit of Mount Cook is in a wee bergschrund, a crevasse, called Middle Peak Hotel now, but Middle Peak Bergschrund. About the size of underneath an office desk, about the size of a big chest freezer, about as cold as well, minus 20. The problem up high in the mountains is when it blows, the wind kills you. Hypothermia, or it'll just blow you straight off the mountain. That's the big killer in New Zealand mountains. We were the search and rescue professionals. We knew to get out of the wind, and we just thought that the weather would change and we'd be able to climb out and get home. And we just happened to climb into that crevasse at the start of the longest spell of bad weather in Mount Cook history at the time. And so it was 13 and a half days initially trying to get out, and then eventually with severe frostbite, with no food, with weight loss, with weakness and everything else. Our only job was just to lie there and survive, until we were rescued. 29th of November.
Did you have a sense that it was that you were sort of getting up to 13 days?
Oh yeah. Counting them away. We were. I went through a couple of days of probably a bit delirious. I had a chest infection that, so I wasn't too well for a couple of days, and that made it hard. But it generally made it hard when you're trying to sleep. Now that's the hardest thing. When you're awake, you're fine. When you try and sleep, the dreams come, and it gets pretty tough. It's not an easy thing to do at all. But the reason that Phil and I survived is that we had knowledge, we had the knowledge of what to do, to constantly work with each other and criticize each other, critique the decisions that we were making so we came out with the right decision. But the biggest thing that we had was faith in the search and rescue team. We knew we would be rescued eventually. We just didn't know that we were about to set a new record, to make it happen. But it did happen.
So So what happened when they turned up? Like the 13, and like, were you did you think you were going to die, or you?
Oh, we came within about 12 to 18 hours of death, and that's both our analysis and the analysis of Dick Price, the surgeon down the bottom, a very experienced, an Everest mountaineer, Everest summiter. Very experienced search and rescue doctor, and he thought we had between 12 and 18 hours left to live, and he wasn't far wrong. We were getting near the end, and at 7 o'clock in the morning on the 29th of November, weather cleared just for a few hours. Ron Small was able to hover in the helicopter above Middle Peak, and Don Bogey on the end of a strop was able to climb into that little crawl into a crevasse, flip onto me, and pop me out. And it was he looked like Father Christmas. Bogey's never looked so good. It was we went back. They picked Phil up, and then we all flew back down to the park headquarters, where within probably a couple of hours we were sitting up pretty happy. Had a banana zap. For those that are my age will know it's a banana milkshake drink. And wanted to know when can we get these toes chopped off, and when can we get back to mountaineering? When can we get back to work? What we didn't know was that it wasn't just going to be our toes. What we didn't know until a few weeks later, it was going to be our whole legs, our lower legs that would be amputated. But I'll tell you what, if we've just been through 5 weeks of lockdown, we've got another couple of weeks that are effectively locked down for most of us. Middle Peak Hotel was locked down. Middle Peak Hotel truly was locked down. We tried to get out, but we couldn't get out. -20, no sleeping bag, just lying there, absolutely still, with only your mind, with only every page of the cookbooks I love flicking in front of me. That was really tough. And so it's made things like 5 weeks stuck at home. Well, that's easy. This whole COVID-19 thing, I call it the neutron bomb, because what's happened is this bomb has gone off. It's completely destroyed some lives. It's destroyed my living. It's destroyed the tourism industry initially. So many people are hurting, whereas others it hasn't touched. Unlike the earthquakes that we've been through here, where buildings fall down, you can see what's happened. There is no buildings that have fallen down with COVID-19. We are so lucky we haven't had so many deaths in New Zealand, but it's so hard to get your head around. The lockdown has to carry on. It has to happen. But we've got the internet. I'm chatting with you. It's chatting with my family. My mum's quite ill. She's in her home in Geraldine. And that's tough. Not being able to be with her, that's really tough. But outside of that, it's I've had a bit of practice at this stuff. I'd like to tell you that I've learned a new language, that I have learned something else, but no, I just head into the forest and build some tracks and do some work and try and rethink about how we're going to work in the future. Because it's no use sitting back. The thing that I learned after Aoraki Mount Cook, the thing I learned after, I had my legs off on Christmas Eve, 1982. That makes Christmas Day suck. Yeah. Well, the big thing that came after that was the understanding that you have to change the things you can and don't worry about the things that you can't. I can't grow new legs, but I can use my stumps, I can build legs, I can do whatever I need to do. And so what we have to do over the next weeks and months is work out, what can we change? We can't change some things, so we need to work on the things that we can change and make the next.
Sorry to interrupt. You in your speaking engagements, you and as I said, you've spoken to over 200,000 people all around the world. One thing that you talk about, or that you specialize in, is leadership. What do you tell, a young leader or even an old leader right now on what is important, and what they need to do to lead their teams? Because in many cases they've got, people working from home, and they haven't got everybody together. What qualities do they need to show? What's important through leadership right now?
It's all leadership is all about your actions. It's around what you do. It's initially perhaps what you say, but it's what you do. And what you do is really comes down to the window that you look out into the world at. If you look out to the world in a window that narrow, well, I'm afraid that's about the narrowness of your leadership as well. The more experiences that you can have, the more learning you can have, the more knowledge that you have, the window that you look out onto the world is so much greater. And you can understand so much more, both around how your people feel, how you can make the most of the situation you're in, and then how can you communicate that. Collaboration and communication. They're the tenets of everything that we do, be it climbing Everest, surviving in an ice cave, collaboration and communication. That's what you really need to do. And that's what good leaders, in fact, great leaders do.
So let's go back then. You're the first double amputee to climb Mount Everest. That's one hell of an achievement. Can you talk
Only one of two.
Sorry?
Only one of two. Only one other person has done it so far. She, a Chinese climber that I know, also a double amputee. He lost his legs as a young climber on Everest, and he had made 3 or 4 attempts to climb it, and he succeeded in 2018. I met him when I was over there. When I take trips back to Nepal, I take trips back to Everest Base Camp to climb small peaks there, and I met him over there, and it was 12 years after I'd climbed it, and he was inspired by that. And
how many days?
He had Sorry.
How many days did it take him to climb Mount Everest?
It takes everyone. Doesn't matter who you are. It takes everyone around about 2 months.
Yeah.
It took me 47 days, and that was pretty quick. Took him pretty similar amount of time, but it took him also 4 goes. So that's 8 months of your life that you dedicated to it over a period of 10 or 12 years. But he made it. But he made it in the same way, and learning from the past, and learning from what I'd done, and learning from both my success, but also the challenges that I faced on Everest. Everest wasn't cheap. I came away, with a bit of a trap of the fingers. It was a cold day. I came back from Everest with damage to my stumps. That meant I had to have a little trim up when I got home. Had to have a centimetre off both sides. But that was the cost of what I did.
But why? What drives you to do that? Seriously, you need to explain that to me, because I don't get it. So you've dodged a bullet to a certain extent in 1982. You've lost your legs. There's so many other things that you're doing in your life. What makes you risk climbing Mount Everest, knowing all too well you would have known the risk?
Well, you see, risk is very much it's how you interpret it, really. It's I guess I've got too many overconfidence genes stuck away on my chromosome somewhere. But climbing's really addictive. The sense of achievement that you have when you summit peaks, you don't even have to summit them. Just when you do a hard move, when you do a hard line, just being in the mountains. It's for people that don't understand, it really almost invariably means that they haven't been there yet, and they haven't been shown this eye-opening experience. So Everest for me wasn't so much of a risk. Everest for me was more about the understanding, just like in business, like right now. it's about planning. It's about ensuring that nothing will come as a surprise. Something always does, but all those other things, it's practicing everything far harder than you ever expect to experience it. So when you experience things, they seem easy. They're called training. It's exactly the same on the bike. Cycling's harder than climbing, because when you're cycling, you can always put your hands on the brakes, stop, get off the bike. The pain stops. Everything stops. Everything's good again. And climbing, you can't just turn the key off. You can't step off the bike. If you stop, you might die. And so in many ways, cycling is mentally much, much harder than mountaineering, because you have to keep on going. And that kilo on the track, that's like they call it the race of truth. It's there's no hiding the numbers at the end of it. It's about how much power, how much focus that you have, and how much commitment that you constantly. And the only way you can do that is to train for it. And so it's out doing hill sprints, doing the long training rides, doing long training climbs. A lot of my training for the Everest was in a gym, doing things like horizontal rows, things like that, right to the end, because you don't want to be in a situation where you run out of energy, where you run out of strength, where you run out of mental ability. And so it's about practice. And it's the same in business, but sometimes it's just about practicing how to think. It's that old trite saying, the cheapest thing in the world is a positive attitude. The most expensive thing you can have, and especially at the moment, is a negative attitude. And so, we have to be looking forward. We also have to understand a lot of people will want to go back to life as it was. Well, life's going to be a bit of a mismatch for quite some time of what it can be and what it was. And so we have to find a way in which to make that the best possible way.
Talk to me about your speaking engagements, because, to have spoken to over 200,000 people all around the world. I know that you're in huge demand in India, in that particular part of the world, but you also speak elsewhere. What are some of the things that you cover in your various talks? I know there's a lot of different topics that you cover, but can you share some of that with us?
Sure. I mean, a lot of it really comes down as just your attitude to change, and it's change as it's the opportunity and the challenge of change. And it's about using, I was lucky in my corporate career as a senior winemaker at Montana Wines. So I was there at a time when we needed to change the culture of the business from an old competitive model to a much newer collaborative model. And in that time, as senior winemaker, as well a small group of senior staff there, we learned so much psychology of change, of psychology of success. And I've been able to use that in both in my business, my mountaineering, but I've been able to take mountaineering back into business as well. And it's having that breadth of experience, that authentic experience when you've actually lived it. That is what is in real demand. Anyone can stand up in front of an audience and teach you things, teach things that they've learned from a book or from the internet. But it's when you learn things from life, when you've made mistakes, when you've rectified them, when you've overcome challenge, when you've taken change and really embraced it. Hopefully that is the take-home message from so much of what I do. It's that my presentations vary probably 10 to 15% between each client, because essentially each client wants the same thing. And so it's my challenge to deliver it in a way that meshes with what they need. Now that's just become a lot harder because, I'm sitting here in my little office here in Hamden Springs. I'm not standing on a stage in front of 50 people, 250, 5,000, like in Singapore. Those days, I think, they're going to be a long way away before they come back. But it's how can we work? How can we do those same lessons? How can we share those same experiences? We have a bit of a challenge in front of us.
What is your proudest moment to date, and why?
Oh, that's just so hard. It's I get bored easy, which is why I do so many different things. Being there at the birth of each of my 3 children, that was absolutely magic moments. And I'm a really visual person, so I carry images around in my eyes, images in my brain constantly. And the other really thing that I'm ultra proud of is the ascent of Everest, is doing something that no one else thought that it was possible. Most of my time in preparing for Everest was turning the key off on all the negative people. I was thankful that people like Russell Bryce from Himalayan Experience, Russ knew me. He knew that if I said I could do Everest, I could do Everest. But coming down Everest was the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. Standing on the top was the proudest. Coming down was the hardest. And it was in that time that I had that vision of my family, my kids, in my mind's eye. That was the thing that got me home. And so those two mesh in really, really closely together. They're both so ultra important. I hope other people have got similar visions themselves.
Can you share some of your goals for the next few years of your life? What are some things that you'd like to achieve? Because, as I said in the introduction, and for those of you who have just joined in, I'm talking to Mark Inglis. He's been an author. He's written 5 books. He's been a mountaineer, a researcher, a winemaker, a motivational speaker, a medalist. He's climbed Mount Everest, just a little thing, and so much more that I left out half of it. But what are some other big goals? I can't imagine you just sitting back over the next. There'll be lots of speaking engagements. What other things have you got up your sleeve, or that you would like to achieve over the next few years?
Well, it's 3 strands really. The speaking engagements, they help feed the family, pay the mortgage. I still have one of those, but they also allow me to interact with people, and that's what I love. I love to interpret all the things that I love: the mountains, the bike, everything. And the best place I have to do that is interpreting it for people, just as we're doing today. I'm so passionate about the bike that I've taken a major role here in Canterbury and North Canterbury in helping manage and create mountain bike trails. And so I work with the Huronui Trails Trust as their trails coordinator, and create mountain bike trails for all different grades. Help manage the St. James Cycleway, the cycle trail. It's to give people the experience, just to make it accessible. That's I love. But it's also Limbs for All. It's a charity that Anne and I created after Everest. I get asked to do a lot of charity work, and a lot of the work that I see is misguided. A lot of the work I see is really reactionary, and sometimes the money's not spent well. And so what we decided to do was we set up Limbs for All. It's a small fund. It's mostly a capital fund, so we just use the interest. And then we have a couple of other projects as well. We work in Nepal. We provide, along with motivation.org.uk, all of their, most of their rough terrain wheelchairs for their spinal patients. Tough place to be in a wheelchair in Nepal. But we also work with this innovative limb company called Limb Care Nepal. And so Limb Care, if you have a look at it, you'll see one of the things that they've done is during the lockdown period, they've used their 3D printers that they were making hand parts for Western countries, as well as making legs for the amputees there. We rebuilt their workshop for them, and then what they've done during lockdown is that they've taken their 3D printers and they're printing off PPE, they're printing off face shields and glasses for all of the health professionals in Nepal for free. You know, working with these people is amazing. And then in Cambodia, that's the other part of our work. We have Limbs for All Exceed, Kids Exceed. And so we work with Exceed, which used to be the Cambodia Trust. And we provide education for the really disadvantaged kids, which are nearly all disabled, live in rural areas. They have no other way of getting an education, and education is everything. And it's everything. It's from helping them with limbs, wheelchairs, but most importantly with their schooling, paying for their schooling, their uniforms, and even how to get to school. You know, 115 kids we're working with. We've done around about 45 bikes so far. We provide the families with money. So if you want to know what I'm doing for the next 3 years, well, for the rest of my life, really, it's to use those experiences that I've had, use the leverage that I've got to take that experience and to share it with other people, I think.
Hey, Mark, you've been very generous with your time today. I want a quick little thank you. I want to thank you for letting us feature you on our little roster at Essential Talent, being the little Kiwi company that we are. It was a huge thrill when you allowed us to be one of the many people that represent you, and of course you book a lot of stuff yourself as well. It was a real thrill, and I'm so grateful that you've given us this opportunity. But most importantly of all, I want to thank you for everything that you've done for so many people in New Zealand. I mean, you're a great New Zealander, and I wish you but the very best for the future.
Thanks, Sean. Thanks, Essential Talent. You know, it's only with you guys that I can reach out and share my message to the rest of the world. And that, for me, you know, that trite saying, that's my passion. And so we'll see you. We'll see you online. We'll see you in person. Thanks, everyone. Cheers.